Hello, my name is Aaron Noriega, and today we're going to start a new book. Taking a break from Harry Potter for now, we'll be back to it. We're reading Artemis Fowl by Eoin Colfer, a fantasy mystery crime book about a 12-year-old genius searching for something and who gets in over his head. I'm reading this right now because there's a movie about to be made of it, and I'm super excited for it, so I had the desire to come back and read this, which is a classic book that I haven't read in years. So I'm really excited to get back into it and remember all the fun plot twists in the series. So, let's begin with the prologue. How does one describe Artemis Fowl? Various psychiatrists have tried and failed. The main problem is Artemis's own intelligence. He bamboozles every test thrown at him. He has puzzled the greatest medical minds and sent many of them gibbering to their own hospitals. There is no doubt that Artemis is a child prodigy. But why does someone of such brilliance dedicate himself to criminal activities? This is a question that can be answered only by one person, and he delights in not talking. Perhaps the best way to create an accurate picture of Artemis is to tell you the by-now famous account of his first villainous venture. I have put together the report from first-hand interviews with the victims, and as the tale unfolds, you will realize that this was not easy. The story first began several years ago at the dawn of the 21st century in the year 2000. Artemis Fowl had devised a plan to restore his family's fortune, a plan that could topple civilizations and plunge the planet into a cross-species war. He was 12 years old at the time. And we are right on to Chapter 1, the book. Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, in the summer. Sweltering by anyone's standards. Needless to say, Artemis Fowl would not have been willing to put up with such discomfort if something extremely important had not been at stake. Important to the plan. Sun did not suit Artemis. He did not look well in it. Long hours indoors in front of a computer screen had bleached the glow from his skin. He was white as a vampire and almost as testy in the light of day. "I hope this isn't another wild goose chase, Butler," he said, his voice soft and clipped. "Especially after Cairo." It was a gentle rebuke. They had traveled to Egypt on the word of Butler's informant. "No, sir, I'm certain this time. Nguyen is a good man." Droned Artemis, unconvinced. Passers-by would have been amazed to hear the large Eurasian man refer to the boy as Sir. This was, after all, the third millennium, but this was no ordinary relationship, and these were no ordinary tourists. They were sitting outside a curbside cafe on Dong Kai Street, watching the local teenagers circle the square on mopeds. Nguyen was late, and the pathetic patch of shade provided by the umbrella was doing little to improve Artemis's mood. But this was just his daily pessimism. Beneath the sulk was a spark of hope. Could this trip actually yield results? Would they find the book? It was too much to hope for. A waiter scurried to their table. "More tea, sirs?" he asked, his head bobbing furiously. Artemis sighed. "Spare me the theatrics and sit down." The waiter turned instinctively to Butler, who was, after all, the adult. "But, sir, I am the waiter." Artemis tapped the table for attention. "You are wearing handmade loafers, a silk shirt, and 3 gold signet rings. Your English has a tinge of Oxford about it, and your nails have the soft sheen of the recently manicured. You are not a waiter, you are our contact, Nguyen Juan, and you have adopted this pathetic disguise to discreetly check for weaponry." Nguyen's shoulders sagged. "It is true. Amazing." "Hardly. A ragged apron does not a waiter make." Nguyen sat, pouring some mint tea into a tiny china cup. "Let me fill you in on the weapons status," continued Artemis. "I am unarmed, but Butler here, my, butler, has a Sig Sauer in his shoulder holster, 2 strike-throwing knives in his boots, a Derringer 2-shot up his sleeve, garrote wire in his watch, and 3 stun grenades concealed in various pockets. Anything else, Butler?" "Oh, the Kosh, sir." "Oh, yes, a good old ball-bearing Kosh stuffed down his shirt." Nguyen brought the cup trembling to his lips. "Don't be alarmed, Mr. Juan," Artemis smiled. "The weapons will not be used on you." Nguyen did not seem reassured. "No," continued Artemis, "Butler could kill you 100 different ways without the use of his weapons, though I'm sure one would be quite sufficient." Nguyen was by now thoroughly spooked. Artemis generally had that effect on people, a pale adolescent speaking with the authority and vocabulary of a powerful adult. Nguyen had heard the name Fowl before. Who hadn't in the international underworld? But he'd assumed he'd be dealing with Artemis Sr., not this boy. Though the word boy hardly seemed to do this gaunt individual justice. And the giant butler! It was obvious that he could snap a man's backbone like a twig with those mammoth hands. Nguyen was starting to think that no amount of money was worth another minute in this strange company. "And now to business," said Artemis, placing a micro-recorder on the table. "You answered our web advertisement." Nguyen nodded, suddenly praying that his information was accurate. "Yes, Master Fowl. What you're looking for, I know where it is." "Really? I'm supposed to take your word for this? You could be walking me straight into an ambush. My father was not without enemies." Butler snatched a mosquito out of the air beside his employer's ears. "No, no," said Nguyen, reaching for his wallet. Here, look." Artemis studied the Polaroid. That's a kind of picture, if you don't know. He willed his heart to maintain a calm beat. It seemed promising, but anything could be faked these days with a PC and a flatbed scanner. The picture showed a hand reaching from layered shadows, a mottled green hand. He murmured. "Explain." "This woman, she is a healer near Tudo Street. She works in exchange for rice wine. All the time drunk." Artemis nodded. It made sense. The drinking, one of the few consistent facts his research had unearthed. He stood, pulling the creases from his white polo shirt. "Very well. Lead on, Master Juan." Nguyen wiped the sweat from his stringy moustache. "Information only. That was the agreement. I don't want any curses on my head." Butler expertly gripped the informant behind the neck. "I'm sorry, Mr. Juan, but the time when you had a choice in matters is long past." Butler steered the protesting Vietnamese man to the rented four-wheel drive. It was hardly necessary on the flat streets of Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon as the locals called it, but Artemis preferred to be as insulated civilians as possible. The jeep inched forward at a painfully slow rate, made all the more excruciating by the anticipation building in Artemis's chest. He could suppress it no longer. Could they at last be at the end of their quest? After 6 false alarms across 3 continents, could the wine-sodden healer be the gold at the end of the rainbow? Artemis almost chuckled. Gold at the end of the rainbow. He'd made a joke. Now there's something that didn't happen every day. The mopeds parted like fish in a giant shoal. There seemed to be no end to the crowds. Even the alleyways were full to bursting with vendors and hagglers. Cooks dropped fish heads into walks of hissing oil, and urchins threaded their way underfoot, searching for unguarded valuables. Others sat in the shade, wearing out their thumbs on Game Boys. Nguyen was sweating right through his khaki top. It wasn't the humidity. He was used to that. It was this whole cursed situation. He should have known better than to mix magic and crime. He made a silent promise that if he got out of this, he would change his ways. No more answering shady internet requests, and certainly no more consorting with the sons of European crime lords. The jeep could only go so far. Eventually, the side streets grew too narrow for the four-wheel drive. Artemis turned to Nguyen. "It seems we must proceed on foot, Master Juan. Run if you like, but expect a sharp and fatal pain between your shoulder blades." Nguyen glanced into Butler's eyes. They were a deep blue, almost black. There was no mercy in those eyes. "Don't worry," he said. "I won't run." They climbed down from the vehicle. 1,000 suspicious eyes followed their progress across the steaming alley. An unfortunate pickpocket attempted to steal Butler's wallet. The manservant broke the man's fingers without looking down. They were given a wide berth after that. The alley narrowed to a rutted lane. Sewage and drain pipes fed directly onto the muddy surface. Cripples and beggars huddled on rice mat islands. Most of the residents of this lane had nothing to spare, with the exception of 3. "Well," demanded Artemis, "where is she?" Nguyen jabbed a finger toward a black triangle beneath a rusted fire escape. "There. Under there. She never comes out. Even to buy rice spirits, she sends a runner." "Now can I go?" Artemis didn't bother answering. Instead, he picked his way across the puddled lane to the lee of the fire escape. He could discern fugitive movements in the shadows. "Butler, could you hand me the goggles?" Butler plucked a set of night vision glasses from his belt and placed them in Artemis's outstretched hand. The focus motor buzzed to suit the light. Artemis fixed the glasses to his face. Everything became radioactive green. Taking a deep breath, he turned his gaze to the squirming shadows. Something squatted on a raffia mat, shifted uneasily in the almost non-existent light. Artemis fine-tuned the focus. The figure was small, abnormally so, and wrapped in a filthy shawl. Empty spirit jugs were half buried in the mud around her. One forearm poked from the material. It seemed green, but then so did everything else. "Madam," he said, "I have a proposition for you." The figure's head wobbled sleepily. "Wine," she rasped, her voice like nails on a schoolboard. "Wine, English." Artemis smiled. "The gift of tongues? Check. Aversion to light? Check. Irish, actually. Now, how about my proposition?" The healer shook a bony finger craftily. "Wine first, then talk." "Butler." The bodyguard reached into a pocket and drew out a half-pint of the finest Irish whiskey. Artemis took the bottle and held it teasingly beyond the shadows. He barely had time to remove his goggles when a claw-like hand darted from the gloom to snatch the whiskey. A mottled green hand. There was no doubt. Artemis swallowed a triumphant grin. But that will have to wait until next time.